Hi, my name is Julia Towell, and this is my father, Robert Towell, and he is a Vietnam era veteran. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'd love to, Julia. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1953 on January 20th. That date's important for a couple reasons, but that is also when presidents always take office on my birthday, on January 20th, every 4 years. As I said, I was born there, but by the time I was 4, we had moved to Edwardsville, where I spent most of my life in this area. Um, I went to elementary school at what is now the board building, I guess, the Hadley House. That was an elementary school. Then I went on to the junior high, which is now an elementary school, and the high school I went to is now a middle school, I guess. So I completed my education, and I did fairly well in school. Was on the gymnastics team for a while. Broke my arm there. Broke my arm once other time as a kid. So I'm dangerous, I suppose. But nothing else. So I started college at Lewis and Clark and decided I needed some help to pay my way through college. And I realized the Army would give me that opportunity. So I decided to join the Army halfway through the first year of college. And again, as it happened, it was on January 20th I went in when I was 19 years old. Then I went in for 2 years, so when I got out I would be 21.
So, do you have any monumental childhood experiences you would like to discuss with us?
Oh, we did have, of course, I mean, it was a pretty good childhood, and living in Edwardsville, we'd ride bikes all over, we could go out, be gone all day, and, you know, at that time, we really didn't worry about kids being, getting lost or other things. So it was a great place, you know, to grow up. But shortly after I moved to Edwardsville, actually, I was burned by a pot of hot coffee, and it burned a big part of my body, and I have scars still, but luckily, you know, it really hasn't affected me other than that. And of course, memories are when my mother died when I was 10 years old. That was took a little while to get over.
What was your motivation for joining the Army?
Primarily to get money to go to college. At the time, they had the Illinois Military Scholarship, which I think they still have, and as well as they had GI Bill to help pay while you went to school. So I figured, 2 years sacrifice to help pay for college wasn't that tough. Plus, it was a chance to get away, see other parts of the country, and learn some new skills.
So, I remember you mentioning a couple days ago that you worked at 4 forts while you were in the military. So what type of training happened at each fort you were at?
That's a good question. First fort was Fort Leavenworth, Missouri, which handles basic training. Basic training first kind of gets you in shape. We did a lot of marching. We did a lot of exercising. We did shooting guns, doing all the basic things that you need to know in the military. And that was for 2 months, and then we went to Fort Bliss, Texas, which we were being trained in air defense artillery, and the different units there. Some of them had rockets, some of them had, I think it was mostly different kind of rockets, or what we had was a Gatling gun. And it was a 6-barrel rotating gun that could spit out bullets very, very quickly, like a garden hose almost.
Which of your trainings that you had was your favorite?
Well, after I went and got the air defense artillery training, I decided to go to jump school, jump out to parachute. And so then I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and went through 3 weeks of training. came back out. Now I was parachute certified, and I joined a new unit that was still training in Texas, that eventually would move to Fort Campbell, Kentucky with 101st Airborne. So now that I had airborne training, I was with an Air Defense Artillery group with their group. But I was lucky to get in the communication group. And so we took care of all the radios and all the telephones and wiring. You see sometimes in the movies they'll string big strings of wire between places so you can have telephones. So that's what I did most of the time in the Army.
So since you are away from your parents and your siblings, how did you stay in touch?
Well, we didn't have email and stuff then. I mean, we would call and when we were in Texas, that's about all we could do. When we were in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, it wasn't that far to drive home or have somebody come down and visit.
Okay, so with your tour of duty, what unit did you serve in?
Well, as I mentioned, the 101st Airborne. We were in the Airborne has companies and it has battalions. Companies are more infantry, battalions are the artillery. So we were in I think the 1st Battalion of the 101st Airborne.
Where did most of your fighting per se occur?
Well, we didn't ever really go into battle. We were almost called up one time. We were one of the first ones would call, but this was at the end of the Vietnam War as people were coming home, and so they weren't really new battles developing. We just had to be ready just in case.
So you mentioned that the war you were in was the Vietnam War. What was that like?
Well, for people to remember, it was kind of a rough time. A lot of people didn't like that we were in that war. But for us, we were just doing our job. And it was a very tough period in American history.
So with your military service, do you have a favorite memory?
Well, met a lot of good friends in the military, and as it happened, I got married partway through my tour, and I had a son born while I was in Texas. So that has to be one of my best memories.
Were there any interesting or surprising moments that were a highlight of your service?
Well, of course, jumping out of an airplane is pretty big highlight in some ways, and kind of scary. Other than that, go ahead.
Didn't you once jump out of a helicopter too?
Oh yeah, that's true. A lot of times we're jumping out of a plane that may be going, over 100 miles an hour through the air to stay afloat. But one time we jumped or basically fell off the side of a helicopter, and the way all these jumps are done when we did parachuting is military parachutes aren't as big as the big sports chutes that you might see today. They weren't square, they weren't just simple round, and they actually were made for you to fall fast, about as fast as you could without breaking your legs and stuff. So they didn't teach us to stand up when we landed. They taught us to fall down, to roll in the direction that we were going. And so you're jumping from about 1,000 feet. And in 4 seconds, the parachute should be open. If it's not, you better be quick, because in 8 seconds, you'll hit the ground. And the whole idea of military parachuting was to hit the ground real quickly before you got shot.
So, do you have any worst experiences or bad memories, or I guess funny but a little intimidating experiences that you recall from your service?
Funny but intimidating, huh? Well, I mean, to tie some of this together, one time my brother-in-law came down to visit us in Texas. And we went up on a hill next to El Paso, Texas. There's a small mountain. We climbed up this big hill, really. And he fell down on a prickly pear cactus. And he had thorns about that long sticking through his hand because he landed right on that cactus. So that wasn't a lot of fun. At least I didn't have it, but we had to go to the hospital and actually, because he was fairly young too, when we couldn't reach his parents, they couldn't do anything for him. So I got to pull the thorns out of his hand with a pair of pliers.
Did you have any captains or, I guess, officers of a higher rank who weren't necessarily your favorite for any particular reason?
You pretty much follow orders. There were certainly be some you might like better than others. But I do remember the one down in Texas when we were in training, and we spent a fair amount of times out in the desert training. And so, we had to watch for tarantulas and for rattlesnakes and things like that because we were pitching tents out in the desert. And in fact, the captain that we had there, he was not only airborne, which we all were, but he was also a ranger. So he's another level of training higher. He liked to keep a rattlesnake in a little glass bookcase like this in his office. I don't know if he was to intimidate us or to just show he was tough.
What was the hardest part about your experience in the military? And that could be about with family separation or just all the stress.
Well, it can be that because you could be thousands of miles away or the other side of the world. That's for sure. Really, it's getting used to a different way of life where you're not just asked to do something. When you're told to do something, you better do it. So it's basically you don't give it a lot of thought. You just do what you're told.
Do you have any memories or experiences from the military that you think affects your life nowadays?
It certainly teaches me respect for the people that do that job and the service they provide to the country. And that rolls over to respect for everybody you work with. I can't really say much more than that, but
Has your experience in the military influences any of your future decisions, like your decision to become an engineer?
Well, it definitely did. Since I went in the Army for that purpose, I came out with a pretty strong focus. I was going to go to college. I wasn't going to mess around. I was going to go to college and get finished. And so I was lucky, and I started at Lewis and Clark Community College for 2 years. Then I transferred to the University of Illinois and got a degree in mechanical engineering. And since that time, I've gone into the consulting business where I'm actually a licensed professional engineer with the state of Illinois and 4 other states. So we design the systems that go into buildings, and we can stamp the drawing with our seal that we're saying it's safe for the public. What else?
Do you have any advice for someone who might be thinking about joining the military?
Well, I think the same advice for anybody is you get what you make of it. What you put in it is what you can get out. It's a good experience. It's a great opportunity. You may even get to travel around the world and see other parts. You get to meet a lot of good people. It's physically demanding. But that's rewarding in its own way too.
Well, thank you for telling us your story of your life and your military experience.